Right now, there is one sport that is all over social media. People have gone crazy for it. Pickleball. I know nothing about pickleball, so this video is about HYROX. Right, before we start, if it looks like I've been hit in the face, I have, by a bee at 40 miles an hour on a bicycle. Me on the bike, the bee was flying, and yes, should have worn glasses, but then how would it ever take off? So HYROX, I am not an expert, not a coach, but I have done a bunch of races in the UK and abroad. I've raced singles and doubles, open and pro, and stood on a couple of podiums. And my previous videos and all of that have been seen millions of times. So here are the only 5 things you should know if you are a HYROXer or want to be. And why only 5? Because right now there's a lot of people trying to portray the sport and the training for it is really complicated. In fact, so complicated you couldn't possibly do it without signing up for their program or their supplements or wearing their merch.
It is perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months.
But I'm here to tell you, certainly at the beginning of your HYROX journey, you do not need that. Obviously, wearing the right merch isn't going to hurt.
I'm not afraid.
You will be.
Will I be the worst one there? The slowest? The most out of shape? I hear that question all the time from people apprehensive about even signing up. And the answer is no, you won't be. You probably won't be, someone has to be, but it's statistically not going to be you. Now, I know it is very easy to see stuff on Instagram or Facebook and assume that everybody at a race is an elite athlete that lives in short shorts and sports bras. The reality is most people there are normal. They do own shirts, and the six-pack is not permanently glistening. In fact, some of the most inspiring people I've ever met doing this job are those at a HYROX that got themselves around despite being a million miles away from where they eventually want to be physically. So I say to everybody attending a race, the first thing you do on arrival is you stop beside the running track and you spend a good 5 or 10 minutes really looking at the people going around the course. For the first 30 seconds, all you will see is perfect bodies because they stand out. It's like a Ferrari in an Asda car park. But after a while, you realize most people are just regular old Ford Fiestas, and some of them look like they'd fail an MOT. And here's another thing, how someone looks is no indication of how they'll perform anyway. I've run past plenty of Love Island wannabes and left them gasping behind me, leaking fake tan all over the track. I've also been shoved off podiums by people that look very, very average. My sled pull picture blows them out the water, but their race time crushes mine, and that's a bit more important. I mean, maybe a bit more important, it's a good photo. So within reason, never worry about how you look or how fit you are or you aren't, or fast you are or you aren't. Everybody's advice is going to be different on this, but in my opinion, if you can jog non-stop, even if real slow for a 5K, and you can physically do all of the tasks in the race at whatever speed, you are ready to have a go if you want to. If you're not yet at that level, but want to have a go anyway, cool. If you are beyond that level, but want to wait until you are even better, that is also absolutely fine. The most important thing to remember is that no one there has time to care about you and what you're going to do. They are far too busy worrying about how they are going to do. Whatever you look like, whatever your fitness, you will blend in perfectly.
It's complicated.
The number of people I see worrying in advance of a race about the complexity of the event is ridiculous. So understand this, thousands and thousands of people do HYROX, and a significant number of them will be complete morons. Yet the number of people screwing up their race because they took a wrong turn or they forgot what station was next, or I don't know, sat on the rowing machine backwards, is very small. It is designed to be straightforward, mass participation event for everyone. And when you are there on the day, it's a million times more simple than it appears in your imagination in advance. Especially if your imagination has been doing a number on you because you've been on social media where people are panicking because they haven't had a course guide or downloaded a map and it's only 4 months until their race. You're not going orienteering. You don't need a map. I might glance at it the night before and think, oh yeah, it's the same as always. 8 stations, they're all numbered with giant signs. There's only one direction you can run around the course in. Just copy everyone else if you're stuck on that one. It is genuinely very easy to follow what you need to do. In fact, getting unnecessarily flustered or worked up thinking it's not going to be is probably the best way to actually set yourself up to make a mistake, or at the very least waste unnecessary energy and adrenaline with your body just going through an entire week of fight or flight response prior to race day. The only place where some people do mess up is on how many laps to run, but we'll cover that in a bit.
I wish I had shoes like that.
My feet hurt.
What training shoes to wear has to be the most common question. Part of that is because it is genuinely important to get it right, but also because it's the one area where you can emulate the fastest runners in the world if you want. So it's seen as something that might make a huge difference but be an easy hack. Wear the same shoes that Hunter McIntyre wears, surely you'll perform like Hunter McIntyre. It's the same reason you see so many guys now growing their hair very long. I'm kidding, no one's doing that. So yes, you can wear the trainer your HYROX Hero wears if you want, but these are the more important shoe things to consider. First of all, it's a foot race. The best way to get better at HYROX for 99% of people is run faster. So any shoe that is unsuitable for fast running is not ideal. Metcons are a perfect example. Used lots in CrossFit, so they're not made for running. They're made to be slipped off easily by paramedics. Now, if the event was only running, it would make that choice simple. You just wear whatever you do for a 5 or 10k road race. Even your parkrun shoe would be fine. But these are the three things that I think your shoe also needs to help with that some road shoes might not. Grip, stability, cushioning. Grip just comes down to testing. Whether you do that test in a gym with a functional fitness zone or in your office trying to push the water cooler over, doesn't matter. Does it grip on short pile industrial carpet? If it does, you're probably covered on that point and you won't be slipping around on the sled push. Although also worth considering heel lock for your laces, especially for anyone using stiffer shoes. If your shoe does not want to flex and it's not on tight, it's easy to walk out of your heels when pushing a sled. Stability. Now, my road race shoe is a Nike Super Shoe, but my farmer's carry speed is ballistic. I am rolling an ankle if I wear these at HYROX. Make sure your shoe can do corners and lunges and anything else you might need during a race. And cushioning. Now, I did my very first races in these low cushioned trail shoes. Good for grip, good for stability, but rock hard. Now, that doesn't affect me in a pure foot race. In fact, being off-road, it allows great connection with the surface that I'm on. And any fatigue that the lack of cushioning causes never builds up enough to be a problem. But at HYROX, I found the pounding that my quads took because of these did become an issue later on. Lunges and wall balls late in the race do not like legs that are tired. On a trail run with a couple of K to go, I could probably push through that. At HYROX with 100 wall balls in front of you, it's a different story.
Come on, princess, let's go! Easy! Come on, Mark!
In fact, it was Hunter McIntyre himself who told me to try a more cushioned shoe to save my legs for the back end of the race. Hence, I now run in these Saucony Endorphin Pros, a stable super shoe. Great advice from the best in the business. Although he also told me I should grow my hair long so he doesn't know everything.
It tells time simultaneously in Monte Carlo, Beverly Hills, London, Paris, Rome, and Stade.
You do not need to wear a watch. I see some people going and researching 800, 900 pound Garmins just because they're now going to be doing a HYROX. You do not need to do that. Obviously, if you're going to do that, then watch my reviews. Don't forget to like them. So don't panic if you don't own a watch, or if you do, but it's not a fancy pants sports one. That said, if you do have one and want to use it, here is how you can do so and guarantee you do not run the wrong number of laps. If you're now thinking, Mark, you can't guarantee that because there are people that run the wrong number of laps at every race. That is true, but if you go back to my earlier diagram, you'll see that they're found within quite a specific group. Right, so at every event, the 1 kilometre run around the arena between each task will be more than 1 lap, because there is not an arena so huge that lapping it is a kilometre. Neither is there one so small that you need to lap it more than 2 or 3 times. So what you need to be capable of doing is counting to 2 or 3. There's a couple of ways to do that. For most people and some smart animals, counting works. We are then left with those who are less smart than dolphins or who are tech geeks and just want to use their watch. That is me. So bearing all that in mind, here is how I set up my watch. It is a Garmin Epix Pro, basically running the same software as their Phoenix model. So any other version or different make of watch is obviously going to be slightly different. The first step is to create a brand new activity. So for that, I'm just going to create a duplicate of my existing run activity. At this point, you could name the new activity anything you like, such as HYROX, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm not going to bother, and we can go straight to setting up the data screens. I'm going to alter the layout first because I only want 2 pieces of information on display. Having done that, I then tell the watch what data I want shown in those two spaces. And that is very simple. Within the timer fields, I need timer, which is the total time since you press start, and lap time, which is the total time since you last pressed the lap button. That is it. We can then come back to the settings page for our new activity and just go through and make sure nothing in there is set incorrectly. For example, we want auto lap to manual only, so we are in control of when a new lap starts. We want auto pause off, so the watch doesn't stop when you stop. And lastly, we want the lap key button turned on and working. And the rest of it is largely irrelevant. If you leave things like the satellite navigation systems still working, then it will try and track you, but because you are indoors, it will do a very bad job of it. How accurate the map that it is left with afterwards might be is of little importance. You can then save that activity and have it displayed along with all your other popular ones. If you look at my main display here, you can see that I actually have one already in there called HYROX that I've created in the past. The result of all that is that I hit start at the beginning of the race, and then the only button I press throughout the entire thing is the lap button when I go back onto the track each time. That is it. In that way, I will always have on display the total time I have been running, which to be honest is only really necessary if you know what to do with that information. For example, after a few races, I knew what time I had to be going into the rowing at to be on track for a good time. But the most important information is your current lap time, because that is always how long has it been since you went back out onto the track after the last station, or at the very beginning since you left the start line. Now, let's say it's a 2-lap race and you're planning to run 5-minute kilometers. When you come round for the first lap, the watch should say 2.5 minutes. That's half of 5 minutes. If it says 2 minutes, maybe back off your pace a bit. If it says 3 minutes, maybe pick it up a bit. If it says 5 minutes 40, you've either fallen over or you've lost all sense of what you're doing and you have run 2 laps, so get your butt into the arena. Equally, if you think you've done 2 laps but it says 2 minutes, no you haven't, keep going. And you don't need to push any other button, even when you come back into the arena off the track, because at that point, back in the arena, you're no longer looking at your watch until you go back out again, at which point you hit start on the lap button again to give you that current lap display, to let you judge your pace and whether or not you are due to come in soon or not. The only other thing you need to do when you cross the finish line is hit stop. If you think remembering to push a button at the start of each lap is just too much to think about, then practice it in training, because I assure you it's not too much to think about. It is pushing a button. Make it as intuitive to do at the start of a run as it is pick up the handle at the start of your row. And just finishing off on the watch topic, with any sports watch and any activity you use it for, it's not a bad idea to start with what do I want the watch to tell me rather than what can the watch tell me. I see a lot of people going into HYROX and they've set their watch up to do all sorts of complex things, tracking training zones relative to each individual station and monitoring how long they take between those stations. I mean, the watch could do all of that, but do not become so preoccupied with what you could do that you forget to do what you should. It's Jurassic Park. And the data you get from HYROX will be more comprehensive than anything the watch will show anyway. And if you're only doing it because you want the watch to gather stuff like your energy expenditure data so that it can just have it built up in your day-to-day tracking of that information, just track the whole thing as a cardio session. The watch knows you're expending high energy at a high level, but it doesn't really care whether that's because at that moment in time you're doing burpee broad jumps, wall balls, or it's date night. It just knows you're working real hard for 5 minutes on that task. Maybe 2 minutes for date night.
Can't be lazy.
I don't want to be lazy.
You cannot be lazy.
I won't be lazy.
Bodies by Jason.
Bodies by Jason.
Say it again.
Spend any time on social media and you will end up thinking that you would be mad to enter HYROX without having completed some sort of training plan or purchased someone's program or downloaded their app. But the reality is the whole sport was designed to use exercises that most people are either already able to do or can pick up pretty easily. It is not one of those sports where you're going to be asked to do something tricky or dangerous. When I entered my first one, I had used a ski once before, and that was 5 minutes earlier in the warm-up for that race. I'd never pushed or pulled a sled. My technique on the rowing machine was rubbish, and burpees and lunges and wall balls were just something that I never did because I'm not a lunatic. In fact, all I really knew how to do was run because I liked running, and farmer's carry because my wife liked shopping. and I got round just fine. That's not to say that when I did start training specifically for races and did get access to the right equipment, I didn't make improvements. I did, but even then, really the biggest improvements I made were in my running times, and that's something that I could have worked on anyway. So my advice is this: read the rulebook twice. It will not take you more than an hour, and you will see there is nothing in there designed to catch you out. It is all incredibly straightforward. And doing that, reading the rulebook, will give you huge peace of mind that it does indeed appear to be pretty simple to do what is asked. Beyond that, of course, you can download a training plan.
I know Kung Fu.
And you can find a gym that's got all the gear you need if you want to take it that seriously. But for a lot of people, they just plan to do a single event and then get on with whatever it is they do normally. They do not want to completely overhaul their training for a one and done race. And there's no need for them to do so. I hear from people all the time that are trying to track down the exact sled that HYROX use, the exact carpet, the exact same wall balls. They want to try and replicate the event as closely as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if they're setting up little cups of Red Bull to be completely ignored for the full race experience. So if you see people doing stuff like that, just know that it is a very small, quite enthusiastic group of people doing it. If you choose to do what most people do, what I do, which is not spend an hour walking around carpet right, but instead train in a diverse number of ways to maintain a good level of fitness across the board, you'll be ready for most things, HYROX included. Okay, that's your 5, but here's some quick fire bonus points for covering off some of the other common questions I get. Can you carry gels and water? You absolutely can, you just can't get past stuff by spectators. I've run with a small water pack in the past and found it very useful. And you might too, especially if you're going to be taking longer than average to get round. You'll often see people telling you it's not necessary. Some of those people will then go and run the event in 60 minutes. If you're taking 2 or 3 hours, it's a very different race for you. You could easily be spending 20 minutes between completing a station and getting the run done before you get back round to the water table again. That's an experience alien to the faster and better athletes. So cater to your needs, not someone else's. Do they have toilets and showers? Toilets, yes, and I've been at many races where you can actually access a toilet off of the run course, although doing so is probably not the best way to set a fast time. But showers, no. Take a towel, take some baby wipes, and if you're planning to travel home and it's some distance, bear in mind that you're going to be doing so covered in your own bodily fluids. Is the sled push and pull really as hard as everybody says it is? No. Post-race complaints about how the sleds were sticky or the carpet rippled have just become the thing that everyone does. It's like the fitness racing equivalent of the Mandela effect. They may well feel tougher than in training, but that's because you're doing it at full speed in a high-stress situation. But I've raced on different carpets in different countries, and I can never tell one event from another. Just arrive at that station, confident it is going to move when you push it, and that you're going to be the one moving it. Do not arrive there concerned about someone else's Instagram post which suggested that the relative humidity in Manchester means the drag factor of the sled is 0.2% different to everywhere else. Is it necessary to hit a single arm bicep pose on the row? Yes, obviously. Do doubles have to split the exercise stations evenly? No. Doubles obviously have to do all of the running together, but who does what on the stations is up to you. In fact, one of you could literally do every single station alone while the other one watches. It means that if one of you is particularly strong or weak on a certain event, you don't have to compromise that station by sharing it evenly, if at all. It is why on Farmer's Carry, my wife runs behind me and doesn't actually do any of the carrying. She does shout, "Don't drop my shopping," but that's more force of habit than anything. Do they have merch I can buy? They do. It's the equivalent of the gift shop at a museum, so if your parents have raised you right, you'll walk straight past it. You do not need to look like Puma threw up on you any more than you need a T-Rex snow globe. Is food available? It is, because these events are normally held in large exhibition centres, but because of that, the food most commonly on offer is going to be typical fast food stuff. Personally, I pack a lunch in a cool bag so that I can eat something decent straight after a race and satisfy my appetite before I start wandering past junk, starving hungry. I can't get a ticket. Should I go overseas? Right now in the UK, tickets have become scarce, and it is not uncommon for people to go do events abroad, especially as getting to Europe is pretty straightforward from here. I have done the same and raced in Spain and New York as well. If you do consider it, know that it is very easy to do, even more so if it's not your first race. Language barrier is hardly ever an issue, and events are standard wherever you go, so you should know what you're doing anyway. My only word of caution would be, no matter how cheap it is to grab a flight abroad, it's not free, nor is the hotel you will need free. It will end up making the event pretty expensive for something that might only last an hour or so. If you're absolutely desperate, crack on, enjoy yourself. But if you're only going because you feel completely left out by not having a bunch of Instagram pictures to upload like everybody else does at your gym, pull yourself together. Go do a park run, spend that spare cash on taking your other half out to dinner. If you are permanently in the gym training, they might appreciate a bit of quality time. Don't forget to start the Garmin if it goes well. Open or Pro? Start with the Open is the obvious recommendation, but after your first one, understand that the only real difference between the two categories is that the weights used in Pro is heavier. So if you can handle the weights, you might well decide to run in the Pro category irrespective of how good your performance is elsewhere. In fact, somebody who is a slower runner but pretty strong might find they stack up better against the competition when a chunk of the event lends itself to, literally, their strengths, even if they are brand new to the sport. Conversely, there are plenty of people running the Open who are elite level experienced athletes but don't ever step up to Pro because they're built for running and find the heavy stuff works against them. Okay, that is it. If you have been apprehensive about entering a race and are now thinking it all sounds pretty straightforward, surely it's not that simple. No, it is that simple. Go and race and enjoy it. Once you have a couple under your belt, obviously you can then decide whether you want to take it more seriously, make your training more specific, develop a fascination with various carpet types, but doing so as a beginner is just not necessary. It is a sport for everybody. Give the video a like, hit subscribe, and stick any questions you got down below. I now need to go and bathe my eye and throw away all of my cycling gear that makes me look like a large flower.